Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Kane. This run goes to Mom, and because it's a hard mode daily, I think this is a good opportunity for me to talk about what I think the implications of hard mode are on dailies, and I feel like they have a lot of negative consequences just because of how they work. Previously, when I was trying to streak, or maybe when I was just unlocking stuff playing single player, there's basically no reason for me to play easy mode, because you can unlock everything on hard mode, and basically in some cases, you have to play hard mode if you really want to get all of the achievements and that final achievement 1001% at the end, and for that reason there's no reason to play easy mode dailies at all. So I decided I would just play hard mode dailies like many other people I would imagine, and I've never really considered what the differences might be, or at least even if there were differences, I know that they were negligible, because there are very little differences, and once you're used to the game, it's not like the core mechanics change, it's just that some things get harder, you get a lot more curses, things that get to be a bit more annoying, longer, etc. But all of those changes I feel like are very, not detrimental, but very bad for dailies, because they affect things in a way that it doesn't really reward skill. So let me give you an example. Let's say that we have more curses, just more curses in general, and I feel like that's very bad, because there are a lot of the curses hide information from you, which means that you're playing blind. So for example, Curse of the Lost, or maybe Curse of the Unknown, or Curse of the Blind, any of those curses make it so you don't know what's really going on, and for that reason you're wandering around in the blind, or maybe you're just picking up random items, and in the context of dailies that can be a really bad thing, because now some people who maybe don't take the items get rewarded, or maybe in some cases because you do take the items you get rewarded. In this particular case, this was apparent on the very first floor. I had 15 cents and there were 2 unknown items. Of course, picking them up makes no sense, at least in my opinion, because there are so many bad shop items. I don't really want to spend 15 cents on a random item which I don't really know what it's gonna be. And because if I do, I also won't have the money, which means that there's a less chance for the arcade to spawn on the next, or maybe on one floor after that. And then again, I have another access to the shop on the next floor, and I would like to save my money for an item that I actually know I can buy and that it's gonna be useful for me. But of course, some people might play a bit differently, or maybe they're a bit more ballsy, or maybe don't really care for strategy that much, and what they're gonna do is they're just gonna buy an item, and for that reason, they might get something really good, so something like a blank card maybe, or the new item, the moving box, I think it's called. And that's just gonna allow them to have that little edge that you really need in a daily, especially in Isaac. You just need one item to really break the game, and that's just enough for you to basically get a ton of points. And for that reason, I feel like that curses like this are very negative towards the effect of the game, and because they're in hard mode dailies, there tend to be more curses. This is also an indirect effect of just how everything goes. Of course, another maybe aspect of this is that the floors tend to be larger, which means that in general you tend to make a rush for it, to try to go as fast as possible, and because of that you naturally miss some rooms, and that's just how it works. That's basically that trade-off that you get. If you want to get to boss rush, you will be forced to miss some of those rooms that you can't explore, and that's I feel like that's a very good idea, because at first it rewards skill, it tests your limits, and you have to make a conscious decision at which point will I actually leave this floor, or maybe at which point it's worth exploring more. I think that's a very knowledgeable experience that we can impart into the players of the game, but in this particular case, because in hard mode dailies there tend to be even more rooms, which means that skipping is even more prominent, but everybody knows that if you go in a random room, there might be a golden chest, and maybe in that golden chest there's a really powerful item, something like Goat Head, and that can really change the outcome of the run. And again, we have another layer of variance which really isn't affected by your skill or how you play. It just depends if you were lucky enough to accidentally stumble upon that room, or maybe if you didn't spend like an extra minute on that one particular floor trying to play the blood bank, trying to get that Ivy bag, as opposed to someone who maybe doesn't care about the Ivy bag, maybe doesn't even know that it exists. They just went to the next floor, of course, they had that 1 minute extra of advantage, and they were able to explore 3 more rooms, which maybe in turn gave them Guppy or whatever. And again, this is something that's not really a fault of hard mode dailies, but it does make it more likely, and for that reason I feel like hard mode dailies in general tend to be a little bit less fun, but then again, you're also rewarded in other aspects for knowing that there are more rooms, that there are more champion enemies. That means there's more exploration bonus, which means that you're rewarded by going faster, and there's, I feel like, more of a balance mechanism as to when you're trying to get the boss rush or harsh, as opposed to when you're just trying to get the most points possible. And I think that's a really neat idea, and I feel like that should be explored more, but again, it's a hard balancing act. I know that talking about it is much easier than actually making a system which would be fair and everybody would be happy with it. There would always be people which would be just unsatisfied, and that's completely understandable as well. I'm not saying that your opinions don't matter, because I think they do, but I'm just saying that everyone has a different look on things, and maybe some people prefer the hard mode dailies because, again, maybe that really stimulates and confirms that you really should go much faster than I'm playing, for example, and that maybe I should change my playstyle because it might be bad, and I completely accept that. But at the same time, I really feel like in some cases people do get unjustly punished, and maybe again you're saying that that's a very acceptable thing, because after all, this is Isaac. Isaac is a game about variance, and if you tend to play better on the long run, at least you're gonna end up on top. And again, this is an argument that I've used many times in the past, and I still stand by it. I'm not saying that it's not. Maybe I'm just putting this out more as a thought experiment, not maybe as much as what my opinion is. Personally, I don't really mind if it's a hard mode daily or if it's an easy mode daily. What I mind is just that we all have a good time, and that, first of all, no matter how screwed or maybe how different it might be, the challenge is adapting to your environment. And no matter how unfair it is, if you're a decent player and you want to rank well, you need to take all of this into account. Even if something seems unfair, even if something seems tedious and boring, you just know that there are people who are willing to go that extra mile to get a high score, and for that reason, that is also part of the competition. And again, I accept fully that some people don't accept that, and maybe that thinking that blank art plus Sierra is unfair because it's so luck dependent, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I feel like if we're gonna play in a competitive environment, we need to adapt to what's currently in the game, and while it's nice to theorize and think about how it could be improved and be better, this is basically the current state of the game, and we just have to play with what we're given. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all, even if it is a bit frustrating sometimes. But talking about this round, I really didn't focus that much on it because it was just a standard daily, but maybe a few things of notice. I did find a PhD very early on. I didn't decide to buy it immediately, but then I found a second secret room with like 10 pills in it, and maybe even more. So I thought in that particular case that PhD is probably gonna be one of the best items I could possibly have. And in there, of course, I found a few luck upgrades, a few range upgrades, which were also very nice, but I also got the perks pill, and I picked the perks pill in hopes that there was gonna be a sacrifice room past that second floor, which I'm gonna be able to use, and once I use that, of course, I would be able to play the sacrifice room for a half reduced health, and then I would be able to teleport out in the dark room, and I would just get a ton of points that way. Sadly, that sacrifice room never did come, but we did get Mama Mega later on, and also found the moon card, and because I had deep pockets, I was able to kind of hold both, and for that reason I hope that maybe a sacrifice room would appear on the mount floor, but again it didn't, so I can't be too upset by it. So at least this is a consistent daily, which I don't think that it has any breaking potentials. Of course there's some variance, and I'm sure that some people might find a way to go forward, but I personally didn't. And at the time of this recording, or at least at the time when I checked the grid, but there were also other people which didn't manage to break, and you can see that my score is 9th, even though the only thing I did is essentially explore every single room, I found every secret room, I went to the boss, beat boss rush, and then I just completed the daily. And I even got hit a few times, which resulted in a relatively high damage penalty for a mount floor. You remember that the longer that you go on, the higher the damage penalty is, and in this case, even though it seems relatively low as opposed to other dailies, I still got hit like 8 times in total, which might be something like a 4000 damage penalty on a run that goes to Mega Sata, for example. But in this particular case, it was a fun daily, I enjoyed it for what it was. At the start it was a bit difficult, then we got Brimstone and Double Shot, and then it did ease up a little bit. It's always annoying when your run just starts to get going and just starts getting a bit better, and then you're just forced to end the daily right there and then. But at least I can say that this is a daily which I feel like would be fair for most of us. I'm sure that some people will find a breaking strategy, but at least we had fun, and I enjoy whenever you can get a 24,000 point score and still rank in the top 10. I think that's pretty cool. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.